everyone. We thank you for joining us for this edition of Health and Family. I think I can safely say that most of our audience members have heard of autism, correct? But the concern comes as to what they know about autism. So we've entitled this program, The Misconceptions of Autism. Most of you are familiar with our next guest, as he's been a powerful proponent of the education of autism in our community. He is, of course, Mr. Anthony Peets. Joining us later in the broadcast will be Mr. Peets' son, Ahmani Peets, who was diagnosed with autism at a very early age. But right now, we're going to get the 411 on autism with Mr. Peets. We welcome you to Health and Family.
Thanks so much.
I feel like we were just talking, reminiscing about how long we've been in education. It's been a while.
Yes, ma'am.
All righty, so let's start off with what exactly is autism?
Well, we have to say that autism, number one, is the world's leading pediatric concern, and it manifests itself in the very, very early stages of life. And we have to sometimes make sure we debunk what the myths are, because what we let people know, it's not something that you catch, it's not something that is disease-based per se. So what we know, it's developmental. And there are some specific signs that we take a look at as our kids are on the developmental trajectory, namely if they have joint attention, namely if they're making eye contact with you, also namely as far as how their speech develops, whether or not they go into their own little world and kind of like stay there. And so what we suggest for people to do, if they just feel that things are not just going in what we would say is a typical trajectory, some people use the word normative, and what is normal? And I think people just pause there and think about that question. So we just say typically we can see how children develop. And as if you take a look at the MChat, and I tell any family out there, just take a look at logging online, mchat.org. There's about 12 questions that you answer. And if you answer things honestly, then you say to yourself, okay, hey, these are what we call some red flags, and let's just do a little bit further development. Many times people pause and say, oh, girls typically develop this way, or boys typically develop this way. And we do know that, you know, since autism is pervasive, and if I had to present to you like a diagram of what autism is, I would just kind of like make a circle, because on each spot of autism, children actually have some specific developmental markers. Some kids are verbal, some kids are nonverbal. So just check it out early. We did take a look at listening to our pediatrician early, and as a result of that, we got to work early. And Ahmani was here when he was 4, and now he's 16.
All right, and I've actually known Ahmani from one of the schools I was at, so yes. Really great kid to know. How common is autism in Bermuda?
Well, what we do know is this: there are some people that remain silent about certain things, you know. So for myself, I would say I know over, let's see, about 170 families that's me personally. Okay. But if we take a look at statistics, and I understand the way statistics work, because if I talk to 10 people and know I have the same issue, then it's 10 out of 10. Right. But the reality would be the Center of Disease Control in the USA and a few other media houses and statistical scientists actually now see, when we first started, it was 1 in 10,000, and now the numbers are going down. It's like 1 in 35. And so if we kind of like do the mathematical equations, we would say potentially Bermuda has at least 400 families that are affected by autism spectrum. There are some people who don't choose to kind of like reach out and say, hey, I need a little bit of assistance. There's no law that says you have to, but of course, when children enter school, you would be able to see, okay, there's just some unique presentation issues here, and you know, make the suggestion for families to just take a look at having some more diagnostic testing.
Right. So can you tell me what, in your opinion, causes autism, or have we reached a definition?
Well, here it is. And when I say here it is, there are a number of philosophies, and there are people who weigh on the verge of science. Now, here's what I will say to the people: this is what I know, and that this is going to be my truth that I share with you. Many people in your listening audience have never been inside of a lab, and they've seen a lab, maybe walk past the door, but they haven't. So in some of my presentations, I use this little acronym BF, which stands for blind faith. And as children develop, you listen to the pediatrician, you do what they say, and many people do things without any question whatsoever. And so I know that if I was to give the typical person who I might meet a quiz over, let's say, vaccines, and say, just please articulate to me what are the ingredients in each vaccine that your child has received, they typically do not and cannot articulate to me exactly what happened. And so we know that whatever is introduced into the body does have an effect on it. Now, we do know that genetically, if my dad walked in here, you would say, that's your father. You know, you'll be able to just see that there are quick, just through your eyesight similarities, So I do know that right now within the research, and I work closely with researchers, I've been inside of the labs, and so I see some of the things, and we understand also, like with science, we sometimes have to ask this question, are you told everything? The answer would be no, you are not told everything. So what I do know is, one of the early signs for us, and there was questions, and people, whenever somebody debunks something and says, this is a not, I just say, just take a pause. This is a not. We had one pediatrician who the question was about vaccines, and you could look at all of these different documentaries, and you have to just decide. And so our red flag from our pediatrician was, I want to pull back on this. She'd already given one of the vaccines called the MMR, and there were people that would say, oh, this doesn't, affect you, and those kinds of things. Now, what I do know, and I go from a position of logic, then I also go a position of science. Would it be true for any person in the listening audience, would it be true that whatever you put into your body has an effect on you? Yes or no? Now, the answer, I unequivocally will say yes, that whatever you introduce into your body will have an effect on you. Then the next thing would be, do you know what that effect has on you? And does everything affect everyone the same way? And so it's like somebody takes a Guinness, they drink one Guinness alcoholic drink, let's say, and I just choose that to say that, let's say it's just alcohol, and they take that 1 cup of alcohol, and then you take a look at the effects over time that it has on that body. Does it affect everyone the same way? And so I know for myself, one of the things that we had to actually have spent time on is detoxifying my little boy's body. And as a result of that, we saw certain things that we did have dissipate. So that's one thing that I would have not introduced into his life early. I know that as children develop, and all children develop in a slow trajectory. In the animal kingdom, you better become an adult before you're 3, because your species would be gone, so they have to produce early. So things develop very, very quickly. In the human brain, and we have enough science to show how things wire up, so there's the genetic component, and then it's a definite that there are things that are in environment that can cause you to be ill. Try breathing in soot and carbon monoxide for just maybe 5 minutes, and you'll see.
I agree, yeah. All right, I wanted to get your personal opinion. Do you, as to why there are more boys that are diagnosed with autism than girls? Am I correct in saying that, first of all?
Well, here is just what the issues is. Like, why do things actually gain a lot of attention or prevalence? And I'm going to be really, really frank with you that sometimes things come to the fore when people with means and money, when things starts to affect them. When money starts going into research, when things start just happening, okay? Because, recently, like, somebody said to me, oh, is he slow? And I had to just pause for a moment and just say, just help me understand. I wear something on my wrist, a habit
you didn't say something
that
else,
says, seek first to understand, then to be understood. I kind of can assuage what it is they mean, but I want them to articulate that. Because when you articulate what it is that you speak, it gives you the opportunity, maybe I'm hoping, just to pause within. What do you mean by that? Because I can give you a question that I might have a lot of skill or knowledge in, and that you cannot give me the answer. And if I say to you, are you slow? That is not going to be what I feel is the best scenario. So the reality as we deal with autism is just trying to figure out, okay, what's going on? Now, we do see that with diagnosis right now, girls are really a lot misdiagnosed. And why? We can see through history and how socialization occurs, are our girls developed to be social beings?
That's a good question.
Okay, and so the answer is yes, though. Okay, mothering, bonding, all has a high social component. So behind that mask of all of the language that they have and the fact that they might be providing a lot of these different cues are the uniqueness and nuances of autism. And so if I had to say, what is a synonym for autism? It's basically, for us in our home, anxiety.
Really?
Anxiety. It's and so one of the things that you'll see Ahmani's persona, but you don't know how fast his heart is racing. I do. Now, how do I know that? Technology.
You've been studying.
Okay, and so with technology, I'm able to see when he enters a certain environment, the heart rate is here, and when he enters another environment, it's soaring. His outside demeanor looks very, very calm, but the inside is racing. And why? And he'll be able to articulate to you as to why things are challenging for him in those ways.
Okay. So let's talk about being on the spectrum for our audience members that may not know what that term means. If you could just talk to us about that.
Well, if you're on the autism spectrum, and again, if you meet one person with autism, you just met that one person. Like we recently, our charity, and I'm the president of the Autism Charity Base, and we brought in a gentleman, Carrie Magro. And Carrie has been in feature films. He's very verbal, but when he first started, you know, and in life, when his parents first had him diagnosed, people would have drawn some conclusions, and some conclusions he does share, like he's never going to, he's about a minute or two away from receiving his PhD, you know, right now. But if people did not go into work and say, okay, hey, here is what we see, and here are all of the actual possibilities. So being on the spectrum would basically mean many different things to people, but typically you would see social interaction be a little bit unique. You would see maybe sometimes we call it perseveration with things, like just a predominant interest in something, and they will communicate and talk about that, and maybe just not understanding some of the social cues. Like right now, as I'm working with you, I'm analyzing about 1 million clues. Okay, are you ready for your next question? Is time running out? All those kinds of things. And there will be certain things that will actually be right now would be helpful to my son. Like he would see in the corner a countdown clock, so he would know when it's time to stop. Or beforehand, you would have done things. You would touch your shoulder, which indicates, or a subtle move, which means that we're now transitioning. He has to sit here and figure, have I said enough? Have I, you know, what's going on? What happens next? And if she asked me a question that was not pre-primed, you know, what is it that I might say? But, you know, and all of those things we practice. We practice every social situation piece by piece.
And I can recall you coming to Elliot, I'm going off script, but I can recall you coming to Elliot, and you really, really took your time with your son in bringing him to school early, because he started his education, his P1 at Elliot, and you were really, really there constantly. I know you checked in once a week to see how he was making out, so kudos to you for being in touch. We have about a minute or so left for this segment, so if you could talk to me about the misconceptions. I know that's a biggie for a minute, but just give me a couple of cues as to what are some of the misconceptions that you see on that you hear about regarding this autism.
Well, one of the major things is just the general conclusion that when you're communicating that you actually understand everything. You could say, yes, and appear that you do. And I can, you know, I would make the connection that, well, maybe she does. But then through some variety of assessment tools or assessment ways, I would see that you had the social cue of going, yes. And then, you know, underneath the table, you're bringing out Google, or you're like, what word did that guy say? Or you don't even know what to do with it, you know, and then you receive on your assignment this big X that indicated you didn't understand. You know,
that happens more often than not.
And so one of the things that I actually built in some things to help you be successful. So my job as parent, and not just to him, but for all children that I touch, is to ensure their success, to provide for them the things that they need to be successful.
All right. So, Mr. Peets, we are going to come back to that question because that's the title of the program. But right now we are going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to meet Mr. Peets' son, Ahmani. Come on back. It's Health and Family Time.
Look at me. Hey.
Raymond, look at Mommy.
Maybe the light hurts his eyes.
Maybe she's just not hungry. Maybe he can't hear us. Maybe we're not stimulating him enough. Maybe it's a phase.
Avoiding eye contact is one early sign of autism. Learn the others today. The sooner it's diagnosed, the better.
We thank you for coming back as promised. Ahmani Peets is here along with his dad as we continue talking about the misconceptions of autism. And we welcome you, Ahmani, to Health and Family. So we wanted you to start off, and this is basic, just give us a little something about Ahmani. And I did say earlier that I knew you from back in primary school, correct? Yes. All right, so tell me a little bit about Ahmani and our audience members.
How old are you, sir?
Well, I am 16 years old.
You're 16, and what's your favorite subject at school?
Well, I do like consumer math, English, geography.
And so you like geography?
Yeah.
What do you like about geography?
You get to learn about certain things that happen in certain countries.
Okay, not many people answer geography. That's interesting. What's your least favorite subject?
Well, I do not have a least favorite subject.
Okay. And what do you want to do when you grow up?
Well, I'm not exactly sure what I want to do.
Okay, but since you like geography, you want to lean in that direction maybe? Or Maybe. All right, back to you, Dad. So we were talking about the misconceptions of autism. Can you continue on with that for us?
Well, for sure. One of the, as I did share previously in the first segment, is that when it comes to misconceptions, it's like, where do you get your conceptions from? And so media is very, very powerful. And so when we had the early signs going on and we were queried and questioned, and my undergrad and grad work is all done in the helping profession. I'm a certified school counselor, and so I had awareness of autism, and it was not something that was really, really prevalent or talked about. And we knew back in our early education career that we had schools that were designed. I'll just pause right there, that they were just designed. And I know that what I do appreciate is that for children who present in unique manners, that we actually look at how we embrace.
Okay.
And when we pause and look at how we embrace, we design things that say, okay, hey, so you actually feel that, because this is happening, that we're going to put everybody over this side. And so I remember watching a movie called Rain Man.
Yes.
And in that particular movie, people saw that what was portrayed was what we call savant abilities, which were like amazing. All these matchsticks would drop on the ground and he would say 5,000 and he would get it correct. And so some of those portrayals were actually, were quite accurate, that you could actually see. So the main one would be that, okay, everyone with autism has these particular skill sets or behaviors. Not everyone is, like a very low percentage, only maybe 5% of the people we've been able to discover have savant-like abilities. We brought a savant to Bermuda and had consultation with him. His name was Steve Wiltshire, and the Art Society brought him in, and we, through BASE, we had some consultation with him, but the Art Society brought him in, and we had opportunity to talk. And he's got a wonderful, people who do YouTube, take a look at Steve Wiltshire's life. He was nonverbal, he was echolalic, which means he just repeats himself, those kinds of things. So, the main misconception sometimes is look at how something is presented to you, look at what you take away from. Like, I challenge people all the time, especially through social media. People will throw things up, you are a horrible parent if you don't have your child vaccinated, make sure you've done this, or you will hear the word of someone who's an MD. And I tell anybody, if you speak English and you are an MD, I have access to your books, I can read what you read, I can go where you go, I can study what you study. I don't have to complete the end result of that, but I know that let's just have conversations, and more than conversations, this is my son.
Yeah. So back to you, Ahmani. I wanted to talk about, sometimes you go out with Dad to talk to people about autism, correct?
Yeah.
So what do you tell people about autism?
Well, people with autism can do many things.
Okay. And how do people respond to you?
People respond very well to me.
Okay. What is the one thing that upsets you about people when they're dealing with you or talking with you? What is one thing you say, look, I don't really like it? Is there anything that you don't like? Everything's okay?
Yeah.
What's challenging for you, though, son? What's challenging? Making what?
Making friends.
And making
conversations.
Making conversations.
Okay. What message would you like to give our audience about autism?
Well, just because someone has autism, it doesn't mean that they can't do anything.
Very good. I think that's it. That's it. I like that message. Alrighty. So we were talking about the actual misconceptions, and we were saying that people with autism, some people may think that, as he said, that just because I have autism doesn't mean I can't do something. What do you say to that?
Well, the key thing for all people is setting them up for success.
Right.
That's it. And so when you set somebody up for success, you get to know them. You get to know the uniqueness. Like, if there was something, I'm here on set, and there are very, very specific behaviors that are necessary for us to have this interview conducted successfully. Right. So I'm not rocking backwards and forward in my chair. But you told me that, okay?
Yes.
And so I know that, you might, let's say, assume that, okay, at your age, you would understand that there are specific things that are not necessary. This is not my world. I am not into the world of behind this particular media. I use media, and so I study and have some awareness, but this is your domain. So I'm going to listen to you and I'm going to follow. So for Ahmani, having doing things step by step. Like one of the things we're working on, it's very, very soon we launch his business, Ahmani's Cookie Company, okay? And our tagline is one bite and you'll be all right. And we've we've done testing with thousands of people who've given us thumbs up to the things that, you know, he's been able to do, and our license comes through soon. And you know, before this, you know, after the show airs, we're going to have a launch for that. And of course, the challenge is going to be, you know, people start asking him questions, microphones go all in his face. He'll be able to give you some, you know, he knows the information, but being able to think real swiftly on the fly, being able to react to euphemisms, being able to react to analogies that people use. Like, you know, early in the day, we told Ahmani to take a chair. He's like, take it where?
That literal component,
you know,
I
like
remember that.
Take a chair, take it over there, you know. So we be very, very specific. So since that's helpful for him, and one of the things, you know, as we work through cooking recipes, and we've been able to utilize interest in science and things like that to say, and he likes step 1, step 2, step 3, and every time we do this, we get the exact same result, and people affirm him. And so they affirm him with, you know, payment. They affirm him with the fact like this is, oh my goodness, Ahmani. So it helps him with his social standing. It also helps him with conversation. It also helps him, you know, with a circle of friends. And that's just the tough thing, is if I'm to myself, who's going to come towards me? And so like I could show the audience a variety of pictures. He's in the PE class. All the other boys are all hovering around the soccer ball and all intently looking at the coach. And the autistic guys who are on the autism spectrum are standing on the edge, of, like, you know, a little reticent to engage. But then you take that one little guy that says, okay, Ahmani's over here. We're all going to go over him. And we're all going to help him. We're not going to be firing the ball at him at 2,000 miles an hour, because he has very, very special skills and talents. And
that they may not have.
Yes,
So
and thank
true.
goodness, like where he is at Bermuda Institute, there is, and we took about 3 years to work with the school to have the actual embrace of understanding, like here are the things that need to be put into place for him to be successful. And just through his presence in my life and presence in the life of others, he actually helps you to be better. Like, this is a pure soul. He does not communicate and tell lies. He's very honest. He's very caring. He's what the world would actually, we all, I believe, are on the spectrum, meaning that we all have, you know, different embraces and different tolerances and tendencies. The however is, for certain things for him, are kind of like heightened, you know. And so if you're asking even like a typically developing teen, like, what is it that you want to be? It's okay for them to say at this particular moment, I am not quite sure.
Of course,
so
that's
our
a great
job,
answer.
yes, our job is to put in front of them all of these variety of possibilities. You know, the camera lady today, she might just change her career focus because she actually meets someone and they say, and she's like, you know what, I never thought of that. Like, it took till after university for someone to say to me, you have an amazing speaking voice.
You do, actually.
And they actually shared that with me. And so I know that no one ever had said that to me. And so maybe I would have considered some other things. However, in my career, I do use voice. And now, thank goodness, with the advent of social media and radio, I intentionally use my voice to help people understand, like, not just autism, but just how to be like a wonderful human being. And when you choose to be a wonderful human being, there are things that you do without spotlight, without looking for applause. You just do these things because, you know, you are just here on this earth momentarily, you know. And while you're here, you know, if you erected a stop sign that helps people not crash, then wonderful. And so that's, you know, with autism, there are going to be many more children that are going to be diagnosed year over year, and I just want the embrace for schools, the embrace of people to understand, to be tolerant, to give them opportunity, to be hired, to not have these kind of like end games that say, you know, you're slow, you know, or you cannot.
And that was actually one of the misconceptions, that being, if you have autism, that you're intellectually disabled, and that is so not true. And I just wanted you to elaborate on that.
Absolutely. Well, we have people that we brought in. Next year, we're bringing in a medical doctor. And so the thing about it is, you know, the people that work with him in surgery understand that, okay, hey,
he's a surgeon.
Yes, so these are the very specific things that help me to work. So these sounds, and so everybody in this room on my team, you're either on my team or you're not on my team. And you're on my team because these are the things that I need for you to do to be successful. don't dislike you, but if you're the person who's going to be coughing or making sounds or wanting to have this or that going on, it's not going to be helpful to me. And most of us can make simple modifications and accommodations to our lives that, like, it's okay to be quiet.
Yeah.
It's okay to change the light bulbs in the room because they're making the buzzing sound. And like one of the profound things my son has said to me is, everybody is trying to change me. But you tell me that I'm happy. Are you happy with who you are?
Yeah.
And he says, I'm happy with me. And I do know that. I tell you, what kind of world is the world? It's a what world?
Social world.
I say, son, it's a social world. And so
but you do you, seriously.
Yeah, so he has the opportunity to share, but just to understand that it is a social world, so people are going to be asking things, and you're going to have to be equipped, because I let him know each and every day, I'm preparing you to be what? What's that I word?
Independent.
Yep.
Yes. You've really grown up. I'm so proud to see you. He's really come a long way from Elliot. This is going to be, I think, our last question. So, in your opinion, people with autism, and we're talking about the misconceptions, they say they can't feel any expression or any emotion. How do you feel about that?
Well, the truth is, because it's a spectrum, there's no can'ts. There are things that say, I need you to, like we would show Ahmani a series of faces. What do you think is actually happening? And Ahmani has memorized probably over 900 movies, and he's able to see, yes, certain things. It's like, okay, so when I saw this is what the character was doing. When I saw this, so there are a lot of different possibilities when somebody raises their eyes up, Dad. So when he watches things, and here's what's helpful, whenever he does things, and it's for him, and it might not be for everyone, but the typical cadence of speech is well over 120 words per minute. We ask people to slow it down, to slow it down. And so when he watches things, he likes to see everything with, what do we turn on all the time? The closed what?
Closed captions.
And so that gives him the opportunity to read it. And what he likes about it is he's able to go over and over it again until he gets it. Yeah. There are people who speak once or twice, and the expectation is
you should get it right away. And I actually learned, you can learn a different language actually reading the subtitles sometimes. So that's it. I really enjoyed this interview, Ahmani. You've grown up beautifully, and you're really going to do well in this world, in this life of yours. You really, really are. Thank you so much.
We appreciate it.
Mr. and Mr. Peets. All righty, we want to thank our guests today for educating us about the facts on autism. It's not about speculating about the topic, but getting the truth about a topic, which is why we get the experts here on Health and Family to enlighten us on our various topics we discuss, and in this case, it was autism. Thanks again to Mr. Anthony Peets and Master Ahmani Peets for their wonderful contribution to our program, The Misconceptions of Autism. On behalf of the team, thanks for joining us.